I'm Sheldon Brown, and it's World Mental Health Day today, part of Mental Health Awareness Week. And Mental Health Radio, Take It From Us, broadcasts an inspirational story, a personal journey of drug use, drug dealing, imprisonment, and eventual turnaround to work in addiction support. Our guest is Haydee Richards, and her personal journey is testimony to the strength and benefit of her recovery and resilience. So that was during the time that you'd been charged, or the police had picked you up. You'd been in court initially. So from that time through to the time that you went for sentencing, you went real hard. Yeah, that was like a year's worth of that hanging over my head, and that was probably the hardest I went. I used as much drugs as I could. I did a whole lot of things that I'd never ever done in my life before, like my morals just dropped. And I did care deep down, but I just took more drugs to make it up. That's how I coped, and I didn't like feeling my feelings. Well, let's come back after a music break to talk to Haydee Richards about what brought all this to a head, and how prison, in fact, sort of was the interruption and the intervention in all of this.
You're with Take It From Us on 104.6 Planet FM.
I'm Sheldon Brown on Take It From Us, and we're talking to guest Haydee Richards about her roller coaster ride through the first part of her life, or a good part of her life, in fact. Those teenage years leading up to drug use, speed and pee, alcoholism, and also gambling, which really, Haydee, that was the downfall. That really sort of created this vicious cycle, I suppose, that got you into real trouble. Yeah, I guess I, at the time I felt like I had managed drugs and what I was doing for a long time. I was dealing for like 12 years, and I was actually, even I know it's wrong and that, but I was pretty good with my money and managed everything well. But once I started gambling, it didn't take long to take me out. Within 2 years, I was really going down, and... So you had to go harder in terms of dealing to fund that, and, what were the circumstances of you being visited by the constabulary? Okay, well, you're hanging out with all sorts of different people on these drugs, and jealous people and whatever, and someone who was living with me told on me, and I'd booted her out, and I think that's part of why I got told on. So, I got told on, and then my phone got tapped for a week. There wasn't a lot on my phone, but there was enough to say that I was supplying, and so they raided my house. Yeah. So the tapping was done by the authorities? Yeah. Right. So what was your reaction when you were raided? I sort of had a feeling it was going to happen. Obviously, I wasn't ready for it right then. And I didn't have a lot on me at the time, I guess is lucky for me. But yeah, it was pretty crappy. My son got ripped out of bed. They thought he was someone else. It was not a nice experience. And after that, to block it, because I knew I had this stuff hanging over my head, I just kept going harder and harder, not wanting to know about it. So there was sounds like a lot of unreality denial about the fact that there was a big prospect that you were going to go to jail. Yeah, although I didn't think so. Half of me sort of, I think, deep down knew. But I remember talking to probation and stuff, and I was not going to go guilty, and I didn't go guilty it took a year for me to go guilty, and because I just couldn't be bothered fighting it. And I just, at the end I gave in, and probation told me that it was my first offence, and that I more than likely would get home D, so I was relying on that. And it didn't happen. But what happened was, in fact, a sentence of jail for over 2 years.
Yeah, I went to court that day and I had my last lot of drugs that morning. And it was just crazy. I started going through all my paperwork like 2 hours before court, thinking that I could sort it all, and I didn't. My family came to court with me and a couple of friends, and and bang, I got 2 years, 3 months, and 2 years concurrent. And my son kicked the door at the court. They were all angry and upset, and that was it. It was over.
So you ended up in prison in Rotorua. What were those first few days like?
Okay, so I went to Rotorua cells for 4 days. It was hell. I was coming off drugs. They'd stopped smoking in prison, so they took my cigarettes off me. No coffee. They treated me like crap, and it was not a nice place to be.
So the first 4 days, I understand, you were sort of tucked under a blanket, no facilities at all, and coming down off a lengthy period of drug use.
Yep, and I was not going to let anyone see me upset. I still had that real tough attitude, and I guess that's what's helped me get through as well. It's been my survival. And, so the whole time I pretty much lay on a bed and put a blanket over my head. I remember asking them to turn off the fluorescent lights, and they're like, nah. So I just hid under my blanket and was very uncomfortable and showed no feelings.
No feelings.
No feelings.
But something started to happen. I think you gained an awareness in prison, and you were able to apply for parole on the basis of doing something. What was that?
Okay, yeah, well, I wanted to get out of prison. I didn't want to do my full time, and I met somebody in prison that I spent, we were in the same cell for about 5 months, and she had done higher ground, and she was on worse charges than me, and she seemed really, really good. She'd done drug rehab, residential, and she kept pumping into me, doing NA and getting myself clean.
So NA is?
Narcotics Anonymous meetings. And so I read the NA book while I was in jail and just had her in my ear every day about trying to apply to go to higher ground.
So she was somebody that had been to higher ground, had done Narcotics Anonymous and the 12-step program and that sort of thing, but had unfortunately ended up back in jail. Yeah, well, she already had her charges and did higher ground while she was waiting to get sentenced. Right, so that was something of a lucky meeting? Very much so. I'm very grateful for that because just having her around, I just looked at her and thought, wow, she seems really good, and if she can do it, I can do it. Well, Higher Ground is an organisation that we've actually interviewed on Take It From Us. They're out in Te Atatu, and it was again a tough introduction, a bit of a tough love introduction. You're going to Higher Ground, but it was again a part of a change of direction for you. Yeah, I got to Higher Ground, and the first 3 days I absolutely hated it. And I just, I was tempted to just go back to jail. Jail was easier. But I thought of my children, and it's my kids that really, I couldn't do it to them again. It already really hurt them. And I just had my friend in my head from prison saying to me, whatever you do, don't leave. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. You'll hate it. Just don't leave. Wasn't as long as the prison sentence, though. No. And, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and probably the best thing I've ever done. So when there's pain, we often get some gain, and it's taking those risks of putting a bit of effort in, making a commitment, and deliberately doing something positive. Yeah, and just doing something different, and I've learned a lot. I've got tools. I've learned how to sit, I can sit with my feelings now. I don't have to take something to get rid of them. I've learned how to react differently to different situations in my life, and it's working for me. Well, there might be a few listeners that are wondering how I managed to meet our guest, Haydee, and that was because I'd been invited to be the guest speaker at a Recovery Innovations graduation ceremony about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that was for about 21 graduates who had completed their peer employment training. And Haydee was one of those people invited, one of the graduates invited to come up front and just tell a little bit about her story and what completing this peer employment training had meant to Haydee.
Well, I just feel really grateful to have been able to do the course, because it's given me a whole different look on how to deal with other people with mental health, with people with drug addictions, and it's also given me lots of help of how I can deal with my situations. I've learnt so much from it. It's just been really, really positive for me, yeah.
So how long did you do that peer employment training?
It was a 6-week course, 2 days a week with homework.
Tons of homework.
Lots of homework that I never thought I could do.
How long has it been since you did any homework?
Years. And, you know, like I said earlier, I felt dumb. I didn't think I could study. I just didn't think I could do it. And I've learnt from doing it, you know, that there's so much support out there if you want it. And, you know, I got 100% in my exam, so...
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, so that
But some of your peers, you know, they all stood up at this graduation ceremony, and some of them spoke of stories maybe not as intense as yours, but similar experiences. So how did it feel to be studying with people who had been on some pretty tough journeys?
Well, you know, everyone's got their own journey, and it's just opened my mind up to other people, you know, with mental health and how other people deal with stuff that's different from mine, you know. And you don't know what someone's going through or have been through in their life, and to watch people do the peer support and just watch people grow, and it's sort of like a little family, you know. You share about yourself and you learn about each other.
Well, there was a little job opportunity that came over my desk or via my email, and I forwarded that on to Haydee because I just thought that it might be appropriate, and, well, there's been an outcome. Yeah,
Sheldon sent me a thing for somewhere to apply to do peer support work, and so I did. And I sent my CV in and did a cover letter, and that's all the stuff I hate doing. And, I got an email last night to say that I've got an interview this Saturday. So, everything's working well for me.
Oh, that's great to hear, and I'm pleased that there's an opportunity that has cropped up.
You're with Take It From Us on 104.6 Planet FM.
And this is Sheldon Brown, host of Mental Health Radio, where it's a bit seat of the pants here in the studio today. Unfortunately, we missed the first part of the interview with Haydee Richards, a really an inspirational story, a personal journey, and you will have heard of drug use, drug dealing, her imprisonment, and an eventual turnaround to work in addiction support. And that's the part of the story that we hope to bring to you. Our guest is Haydee Richards, and her personal journey is testimony to the strength and benefit of her recovery and resilience. Now, this interview was first broadcast 2 years ago and is part of bringing you outstanding interviews and personal stories to mark 10 years of my hosting of Mental Health Radio. Take it from us. So we hope to bring the second part of Haydee's story to you right now. What have you got in your wellness recovery book about managing anxiety?
Well, I have a lot of things, you know. I have a lot of tools now, and doing that recovery plan has been really good because it's there all the time and you can always add to it. And I guess going through it with other people, you get other ideas from all the people you're doing it with, you know. And I've learnt, you know, doing breathing. I find just talking to people, reaching out to people has helped me a lot. And a lot of self-talk. I turn my critic round into positive self-talk, which really helps me.
Yeah, well, I've introduced a little paper in our wellness course called Turning Down the Negative Self-Talk, and we're all a little bit guilty of talking negatively, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had a massive self-critic, telling me I was useless and that I was no good and I'm not as good as them and I just can't do stuff. And, it's taken time, but I've learnt to turn that around, and it definitely works for me.
Well, you've admitted that you talked to yourself in those early years, even before you became a teenager, of feeling dumb. School made you feel dumb, and I guess when we say to ourselves, well, I'm dumb, it's not really going to help our ego or our confidence or maybe even our intelligence.
Yeah, and that's how I thought of myself, and I think of myself a lot differently now, and I guess with all the tools I've learned and what I've been doing, I do things differently now, and I face stuff, and I take challenges on no matter how scary they are, and the more I'm doing that, the more confident I'm becoming and the more opportunities I've been getting.
So that applies to coming on Take It From Us.
Yeah, it's everything.
Right. I mean, what are some of the positive things that you say to yourself now?
Well, I tell myself that I'm doing well and that I don't need to use anymore, which is, one of the biggest things for me. And that just for today, I'm okay. And I'm proving to myself every day that I'm doing well. So, and just having challenges and doing them, feel the fear and do it anyway, I guess. And it's definitely working.
Yeah, well, Haydee and I wandered across from the radio station here across just to have a cup of tea, and we both sort of shared about mindfulness and living in the moment, because there's been a few stressful things associated with the radio show, and I guess I needed a little bit of a G-up in terms of being mindful and just living in the moment, and so it was helpful for me as well. The people that you did the RAP course with, were they the same people that went on to do your peer employment training? Yeah,
I did it with 4 other people who are people that I've done higher ground with as well, so we're pretty close, like a little family, I guess, and so it was good to have other people to do it with that I knew. Yeah.
So one of the benefits of being involved in doing these training workshops and is not only that you develop a skill, you graduate, but you meet like-minded people that you can stay in touch with.
Yeah, and it's it reminds you that there's other people out there that are going through similar stuff. You're not the only one, and I know now that whatever I face now, I don't have to do by myself.
Well, so many people on this radio show as guests have definitely said that about realising that there are other people out there, lots of other people that are having to confront some of these challenges. I mean, you're currently supported. You're living in a residential home. Who runs that?
I'm staying at a Wings Trust house, and so I went from higher ground to Wings Trust. I had a choice, I could have gone back to my hometown, and I just knew that if I went back there, the only people I know pretty much are either drug dealers or, in that scene, it wouldn't have taken long, and I think I would have gone off the rails again. So I'm really grateful to Wings. I've done groups for mornings and stuff, and I've had to do meetings, NA and AA, but it's really, really helped me. And I have a counsellor there who I can see, if I need someone to talk to, and they've just been a real massive support to me, and I'm very, very grateful.
So we hope that also there's some people from Wings Trust, and if you haven't listened to Take It From Us before, welcome to Take It From Us. We hope that you might become regular listeners to our mental health show. Yeah, so this is a house. How many are living in the house?
There's 6 of us living there. We pretty much can do whatever we want. We have to work after a certain amount of time of being there, so we either get a job or do voluntary work or training, and it's basically just the next step of getting out into the real world again. You know, it's cheap living, and as long as we don't use and abide by a few of the rules, we have to do one group a week. You know, we're allowed to stay there for up to a year, and it's just helps. You can either save money, get you back into work. It just gets you breaking into getting out into the real world again.
Well, you've not only picked up one job, but in fact two jobs, and you've got this prospect of perhaps doing some peer employment if you're successful with your interview on Saturday. So it sounds like you're notching up a fair number of successes. Yeah, and
I feel very lucky. You know, I don't know if it's luck, but I know I've put the work in, and I guess doing all the right things and facing the challenges. You know, people say the world is your oyster. Well, it really is. It's choices, and I guess I'm making smarter choices than I used to.
Well, I think if we're not out there doing at least something, then we're not going to either trip over opportunities or be able to identify opportunities. And it was through getting involved in creativity and some bone carving that used to be a school that Framework operated, that I met the then CEO of Framework, and I said, well, what are you doing in terms of marketing and promotion? And that person said, well, it's top of mind at Framework, but we're not doing a great deal. And I said, well, maybe I could help out. So that's the very reason why I am working for Framework. If I hadn't have been doing bone carving, if I hadn't have taken a bit of a risk and spoken to this person and put myself out there, well, maybe I'd be still making jewellery. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess, stepping outside the square, it's all new to me. It's a whole new life to me, doing things different, giving things a go, knowing that, I think learning all the time is good. I feel like I have a purpose now. And also, my kids, they just see the change, and I know that they're proud of me. I was going to say, I bet they are proud of you. Yeah, and I've got a beautiful granddaughter, and it's nice to be able to say I've been clean since she's been born. Well, I'm sure Haydee is the youngest grandmother that we've had in the Take It From Us studio. How long have you actually been clean for now? Just about 26 months. Yeah.